A young doctor is walking home from his shift. He knows these streets. He has walked them 100 times, but tonight he cannot see his own shoes. So he does something strange. He turns sideways, presses his palm flat against the nearest wall, and starts to walk his fingers along the brick building to building, corner to corner, reading the city like a blind man reads a room he used to know by sight. His name is Donald Acheson. In a few decades, he will become one of Britain's most senior public health officials. Tonight, in December 1952, he is just a man lost 400 yards from a hospital he could normally find with his eyes closed. London is not on fire. London is not at war. London is simply breathing its own smoke back in, and it will keep doing that for 5 more days, while the people in charge of the city insist there is nothing unusual happening at all. This is a story about how a city can watch people die and still call it weather. To understand why nobody panicked at first, you have to understand what fog meant to London. For over a century, thick yellow-brown fog had been part of the city's personality. Novelists used it as scenery. Cab drivers navigated it. Children born in the East End grew up thinking a fog so dense you couldn't see your own feet was simply London being London. There was even a nickname for it, half affectionate, the pea-souper. By the winter of 1952, coal supplied well over half the city's energy. It heated, homes ran power stations, fed factories. Coal fires were cheap familiar, and in a country still recovering from war rationing, a small, stubborn comfort. When the cold snap hit in early December, Londoners did the only sensible thing they knew. They fed their fires harder. There had been warnings before. A smog in 1948 had killed roughly 300 people, and the Ministry of Health hadn't thought it worth a serious investigation. Earlier that same year, 1952, the Minister of Housing Harold Macmillan had said publicly that he didn't believe London's air actually needed fixing. So when the sky over London began to thicken on the evening of Thursday, December 4th, nobody in government was watching for a disaster. They were watching for a Thursday. An anticyclone, a huge, motionless dome of high pressure, had settled over the region. No wind, no movement. The warm air sat on top like a lid, and the cold air and everything London was burning stayed trapped underneath it. Meteorologists have a name for this, a temperature inversion. Ordinary people just called it a still cold night. By Friday morning, the fog had a taste, sulfurous metallic, faintly sweet with tar. Nobody thought to be afraid of it yet. They'd smelled something like it before. By Friday night, the fog had stopped behaving like fog. It didn't just sit outside, it crept indoors, under door frames, through window seams. People sitting in cinemas couldn't see the screen from their own seats, and the films were canceled mid-showing. At an agricultural show in Smithfield, cattle on display began to choke. Several did not survive the night. If it was doing that to a bull, people started to wonder quietly what it might be doing to a set of human lungs. Buses stopped running except with a man walking in front carrying a flare guiding the driver step by step. Ambulances couldn't navigate the streets at all, so patients in respiratory distress were sometimes walked to hospital by neighbors, one slow block at a time. Here is the part that matters most psychologically. The people getting sick weren't strangers to smog. They'd built their whole understanding of bad air around a lifetime of pea-soupers that were unpleasant but survivable. So when their chest started to tighten, the instinct wasn't alarm, it was familiarity. This is just a bad one. It'll lift by morning. It didn't lift by morning or the next one. By the time it finally cleared on Tuesday, December 9th, funeral homes across the city had run out of coffins. Florists had run out of flowers. And this is where the story stops being about weather and starts being about power. The government's first instinct was not investigation. It was minimization. An early, unfinished report floated the idea that the spike in deaths was simply a flu outbreak that happened to coincide with the fog. A convenient coincidence that required no chimney to be regulated, no coal industry to be confronted. Prime Minister Winston Churchill never addressed the disaster publicly at all. Macmillan, the same minister who months earlier had waved off concerns about London's air, spoke instead about the broad economic considerations of asking people to stop burning coal, as if the true cost of the smog was the price of coke fuel, not the price of thousands of lives. Weeks later, once the fog was a memory and the newspapers had moved on the registrar, General finally published a number around 4,000 dead. It was treated at the time as the whole story. It wasn't. The real number took years to surface. A government scientist named E.T. Wilkins didn't accept the tidy 4,000 figure. He went back through the mortality records for the months after the smog, not just the 5 days everyone remembered, and plotted them against a normal year. What he found was a second wave, quieter and slower than the first 8,000 more deaths in the winter that followed, mostly from bronchitis and pneumonia, mostly in people whose lungs had simply never recovered. 12,000 in total, 3 times what the public had been told. It took a private member's bill from a mustached backbench MP, not a government initiative, to finally push through the Clean Air Act of 1956. Smoke-free zones, restrictions on coal, grants so families could afford to switch their fires to something that wouldn't fill their lungs while they slept. Here's the uncomfortable part. London's fog wasn't a natural disaster the government failed to predict. It was a known, decades-old habit, coal smoke trapped by weather, that the country's leadership had already been warned about in 1948 and chosen not to act on, because acting on it was expensive and inconvenient, and nobody wanted to be the one holding the bill. The fog lifted from London on a Tuesday in 1952. It has never entirely lifted from the way institutions handle bad air. Decades later, a 9-year-old girl in South London named Ella Kissy Deborah would die of an asthma attack, and it would take her mother 7 years of campaigning before a coroner agreed officially that air pollution had contributed to her death. Cities don't usually announce when they're quietly killing the people in them. Someone has to count late, and someone has to keep asking why the counting took so long. If stories like this deserve to be remembered, not forgotten in a filing cabinet, subscribe, because the next case study is already waiting.